Hello, Chameleon Wranglers! I am excited to announce the launch of the Chameleon Academy line of Arboreal Enclosures for reptiles. This is in collaboration with Paul Barclay of Custom Reptile Habitats. Today I bring Paul on and we discuss the reptile enclosure industry as it's been over the last decade. And just to set the stage, in 2013, I got involved in reptile enclosures when I started the Dragon Strand Chameleon Caging Company. Paul's been a lifetime reptile enthusiast, and he got involved in professional reptile enclosures in 2015 with the opening of Custom Reptile Habitats. I, of course, have been deeply involved in the chameleon community and have specialized in arboreal reptile enclosures. Paul has been a supporter of moving our reptile husbandry forward, and so he's a perfect person to collaborate with to create a new generation of arboreal enclosures. Please welcome Paul Barclay of Custom Reptile Habitats to the Chameleon Academy podcast. Hello, Chameleon Wranglers. Welcome to another episode of the Chameleon Academy podcast. With me today is Paul Barclay from Custom Reptile Habitats. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Bill. How you doing?
I'm doing great over here. Well, we have Paul on because Paul has actually gotten very involved with the Chameleon Academy in the way that he's worked with me and we've collaborated on a line of enclosures that are the Chameleon Academy Arboreal series, specifically for arboreal reptiles. And so we would like to get to know you, Paul, and the background, how you got to be where you were, and how in the world you got to the point where you said to the chameleon guy, hey, make an enclosure. What do you want on
it? Well, yeah, it's been a while. We've been talking, I guess, for a couple of years now, at least.
Yeah.
And on the finer details and so on. But did you want to begin with?
Let's start off.
We began, or
let's start off with Custom Reptile Habitats.
Yeah.
When did that start, and why did that start?
Myself in my career, I've had multiple different industries that I've worked in, starting with hospitality and fitness, and that took me out of Australia, where I was born, of course. And one thing led to another. I ended up here in the United States on vacation, coming to visit a friend, and ended up immigrating and became a citizen in 2001. And mainly back then I was in the fitness business, and I had an opportunity to get involved in a little bit of online business. And I was one of the first companies, I guess, to get involved with importing Ugg boots from Australia. Okay. And I started with a website, grew it into a wholesale company. And that became the second largest company of that kind, if you like, specializing in the Australian sheepskin boots.
Okay.
So I was doing that, and we sold that company in 2009, just in the middle, or just halfway through the Great Recession. And so we did that, and then after a few years, I was like, I need to find a bit of a job to do. And one thing led to another, and I actually applied for a job here in Dayton for a reptile breeding company as a sales and marketing manager. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I've grew up with reptiles, been around reptiles all my life. I think my first reptile enclosure was probably at the age of 13. So we're going back, I'm going to date myself now, but that's 46 years ago. Really, we as in myself and some of my mates down there, we'd spend our weekends going out on our bikes and, with a little reptile bag and collecting dragons and different things. Shinglebank skinks were all around. Never had many snakes when we were younger because our parents wouldn't allow it. But we kept turtles and so on. But really anything that I ever did as far as keeping reptiles, I always wanted to sort of create an environment, a mini habitat, if you like. Mm-hmm. And even going back to 13 years old, I remember we dragged over an old water tank, and it was cut down, and we made this big ring, and it was called the reptile tank. And we decorated it and put plants in there and a little pond and so on. We had the turtles and the shinglebacks. And then as I got older, I did eventually get some snakes in Australia. But then, as I mentioned, I ended up here in the United States where over the years just kept all kinds of reptiles from snakes and lizards and so on. So it had a bit of a background. So when this opportunity came up, I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I jumped into that, and I guess that kind of got me into the industry, and that was a decade ago. And then I was just really consulting. I started, my company was providing services, and around about 2016, I think I officially launched Custom Reptile Habitats, the website, going back onto my e-commerce days and that sort of thing. I wasn't quite sure if there was a business there yet. And so I was just kind of dabbling and doing a little bit of drop shipping and looking into it. But, in the consulting position, I visited pet stores all across the country and all these trade shows, and I'd go and see the offerings. And I was like, why is it that we go to a pet store and we see this beautiful big display for the fish and these hoods and stands and these giant aquariums and coral and all the decor, and then you walk around to the reptile section and it was pretty dismal. And I thought, reptiles are nearly as popular as fish. So I think I started seeing universal rocks, for instance, show up at some of the trade shows. And I was chatting to some of the cage builders back then and like, have you ever thought about putting that in that? And I got a lot of pushback at the different markets. But what I used to hear was no one wants to pay for that. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I think there's a market for something that looks good in someone's home. And reptiles in popularity are only just a little under fish and growing rapidly. I think in coming years will surpass fish as far as number of keepers. And so I really felt there was an opportunity to just up it. And, it started with universal rocks and fairly humble beginnings. And that was in 16. So 7 years later, here we are.
Well, I got to say that is my experiences as well. I don't know how many of my listeners, viewers know this. I started the Dragon Strength Chameleon Caging Company. That was in 2013. And that was my emphasis was I wanted to be able to create enclosures that allowed us chameleon people to have as beautiful as enclosures as dart frog people. Now, I know it's taken a while to get there. They started off way ahead, but that's what I wanted to do. And every time I'd come out with a design, that's what I would hear. No one's going to pay for that. And thinking, yeah, you know what? No, people will. If there's quality there, that's a need. There's a need for that. And so that was about the time where I broke from everything's got to be cheap, cheap, cheap to, well, let's start adding quality in. So now something that I've noticed with Custom Reptile Habitats, which is what caught my attention in the first place before we had even met, is that you seem to have a drive to push reptile husbandry forward. Instead of saying, I'm making boxes to sell and what can I make that someone's going to buy, you had this overreaching idea that you wanted to push husbandry forward. Can you talk about a little bit how that merges into being a business?
I think it's just what makes me tick. It's just the way I think. When I began, I mentioned the fitness business. I started out as a skinny kid and got into powerlifting and became fairly competitive and did that for quite some time. And then, so I kind of got that competitive kind of thing, if you like. But when I started my first business I had a business at 15. I used to make gym equipment and sell it in the newspaper back then when I was doing my training. But I officially got into business, registered a business at 24. And I think I just kind of applied the powerlifting, the competitive kind of thing to the market at the time. And back then in fitness equipment as a parallel, if you like, there was a lot of cheap imports coming in, and, I was the champion powerlifter, and I was like, that's all, we can do better than that. So, I wanted to build it up and try to be the best. Mm-hmm. And then that led me to working for Nautilus, the equipment company. And there was an opportunity in the Middle East. So I had another opportunity to work for the market leader. I did some different work while here in the States. And then when I started the footwear company that I mentioned, the boots that I was competing with, I was like, it's a comfort product, but it has some flaws. If it's a comfort, it should have more of an insole. The outside shouldn't slip. So I loaded it full of features, and we marketed that product as the best. So I don't know. It's just kind of how I think. If I do something, I want to try to do something. Certainly in the footwear industry, in retail, there's a thing they call the point of difference, and that is, the first year we came around, the UGG boots had become very, very popular, and so we're at a big trade show in Las Vegas, and there was lots of what we'd call Me Too's, a lot of copycats. So they're all got their sort of offerings and things like that. And the first year, sort of people, maybe you're just copying them kind of thing. And then over a couple of years, they all disappeared. And we became bigger and bigger and bigger, and were loaded with features and things like that. And it was really the fact that we were a similar product but different. And there's the point of difference. So you have to have a reason for a consumer to pick your product, I believe. So, I think it's just my philosophy, just the way I think. I'm competitive, but if I do something, I don't want to do average and just sell widgets. I want to, if I get my teeth into something, really try to, how good can we make this thing? So if that makes sense, that's sort of just the way I think.
Well, it's gotten you to be involved with some pretty high profile people in the reptile community. You've worked with Brian Barczyk and Snake Discovery. Can you share some of the things you've done with Brian and Snake Discovery?
Yeah, sure. I think along the way, just as Custom Reptile Habitats was getting started, Brian was launching a coconut substrate. And I remember talking to him and, asking him what was he going to do with it? And he was wanting to sort of develop a line, a brand, if you like, selling all kinds of things reptile. So, I jumped in for a while there and thought, someone like Brian, with his following, and that's a great start. And we need a quality brand. I sort of going back to, why something better, improve husbandry. I just think, at the time, the market needed a bit of a kick. I just saw, a lot of the products that I thought, well, they're okay, but it could be better, So I was pretty excited about that. And then of course I found out, Brian was putting together a zoo, and I'd been working with Universal Rocks. So, introduced him to that, and, put that deal together, and was down in Dallas building some of the first cages for the zoo, which was great. And then ultimately, I just thought he was just taking off with the YouTube and launching his zoo. And he's actually a pretty modest guy in real life. So he was, I just need this much to break even. I'm like, no, I think it's going to do really well. You're going to open up a whole new market. But I just felt he was going to be really busy with that and busy with his YouTube. So I just, went back to Custom Reptile Habitats and started developing that more. And then I was at a trade show, and I bumped into Emily and Ed at Snake Discovery. And, I told them about a new product that I was doing, if they'd do a review, and they loved it. Did a review, and one thing led to another. And then I found out they were building a zoo. Mm-hmm. So, and this time it was on site. So I helped them with that. we went down to Universal Rocks and bought all the gear, and this time we built it right there. I think I did about 10 trips up to Minnesota from start to finish, including the grand opening. And that was a lot of fun. That was just totally different. But I think all the way along, including, even go back to Brian, the transition he did from just a breeder sort of thing into what the Reptarian became is just amazing. And so I just enjoy pushing that forward again, And so, the Snake Discovery Zoo is, you've been there. It turned out, wonderfully well. It's been very successful. I just, and I think there's a bit of a rewarding thing, building a great habitat for an animal. And for me, I can't look at I've never really got excited about breeding and that sort of thing. It doesn't really interest me. I'm really more interested in seeing the animal in as good an environment as I can create and provide for it. And if it's a thing of beauty, then that's a great thing. So, just something I'm passionate about. And I guess it just got me in the right place at the right time to work with those folks.
Well, you worked with a number of folks. What is your philosophy in dealing with content creators and influencers?
Well, very, very important. I really, really think that they are one of the reasons that our industry is accelerating as it is. It wasn't that long ago. Just, I mentioned I've been in it officially for a decade now, but only 5 years ago, there was no bioactive in the stores or advanced lighting like an Arcadia, and caging was still very, very much the way it is today. Well, it was then, it's a lot of smaller enclosures, the typical thing that people have been doing for many, many years. So, it was just exciting to see that change. And I really do think it's got a lot to do with the amount of influences out there. There's also a generational change going on. I crunched some numbers recently, and I was surprised to learn that almost half of reptiles are kept from generation Y and Z. So we're talking about a younger audience, and they've got already statistically 49% of reptile ownership is in that. And we're talking about, my daughter. And that doesn't account yet for the new generation alpha, who people are about 10 years old. They're not yet adults and not included in this recent survey from the World Pet Association. So I really do believe that the influencers are making a big difference out there, which drives the consumers to go to the stores asking for this product, or maybe, they're perhaps bioactive they're looking for, or a different lighting, or something bigger as far as the caging. And then the stores are then reacting. So it's, but I really do think it's got a lot to do with the influencers and the amount of them out there, and the quality. There's some wonderful people out there. It also makes the husbandry and the care of the reptiles so much easier. We've got that information where you can go on YouTube and you can find, good content, good quality, reliable content very easily, like never before. Yeah. So, making mistakes or, trying to guess or put it together yourself, you've now got these resources that you can easily find. And I think that's got a lot to do with it, for sure.
Okay. Well, this is about the point of the story where I waltz in. I had been noticing that you had been coming up with some arboreal enclosures. I know you had a 2 by 2 by 4 foot tall, and then you had this crazy thing for Gene, your veiled chameleon, which is this open air enclosure sitting in your office, which I was able to see. And yes, Gene hangs out there. So if anybody's wondering, yep, Gene, the veiled chameleon, stays in there. Now, that would make me entirely nervous for many chameleons that would not want to stay put. But I was impressed with the innovation and the creativity that would go into these couple of enclosures that I saw from your company. And so,
Well, thanks.
And so that's where Paul and I started talking about possibilities of arboreal enclosures for the future. And he pretty much offered, says, are you interested in putting together a Chameleon Academy line of enclosures? And I jumped at that chance. That was a great opportunity. And that was about, that was a couple of years ago that we just started talking and started bouncing around ideas. And what you're seeing behind me, this is the result of that. And really, this is I started this the thought process behind these designs before I met you, Paul. And actually, I had a prototype of this idea, this concept. That was I was at the January 2020 Reptile Super Show in Anaheim, California. I think it was Anaheim, California. And so I've been working on this kind of idea for a while. And I was excited to present that. And you pretty much said, well, Bill, what do you want? And, and I said, well, okay, you give me a blank check, I'm going to take it. And so, yeah, you let me put on this little window here, my little forest floor viewing window. That's
right. Yep.
Yeah. Usually the arboreal enclosures don't think about the bottom of the enclosure, but that's an important thing in the theme of the Chameleon Academy going forward. We're talking a lot about the inclusion of bioactive and arboreal, which traditionally chameleons and bioactive haven't been associated. And there's reasons for that, which we don't go into, but that's starting to change.
It is. Yeah.
And so how was it from your side saying, okay, Bill, what do you want?
Well, the Chameleon section on the website has been coming soon for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I dabbled with, you mentioned a 4x2, which was the standard size, 4 foot tall, 2 foot deep and wide. And I put that in. And one of the other nice things about having a facility and the office space is as we've built out offices, we've put in different displays, but it also allows me to get those animals, build something for them and watch how they do. And you learn along the way. I mean, my interest, of course, is providing a great habitat for the animal that works really well and perhaps, better than something else. But it allows that feedback. And so, yes, I did that big open air design. You might see it. The light's on in the corner there. and yes, he does stay there. But it after watching him, that enclosure is 3 foot deep and 4 foot wide. And I'm like, he uses all that space, certainly along the canopy and a little below. And he'll come down in the morning to take his bathroom break. He's got a little spot there he utilizes and so on. But after watching him use that space, I was like, I don't think a 2 foot by 2 foot is enough space for a veiled chameleon. And it's got the depth, yes, but they don't use a lot of that. So I was starting to think wider. And of course, I was watching your channel and years ago, perhaps even before 19, watching, discussing the European designs with the chimney sort of effect. And I didn't invent it, but I had many, many years ago already incorporated ventilation at the front, thinking, well, I hate looking at something that has high humidity, but all the glass is fogged up. I also was not, for something like a chameleon, which I think is probably one of the most amazing lizards you can keep, because of their beauty, it's something you want to see. And I was like, I don't know about the fly screen. I think, so when I saw that you were onto that as well, as far as the hybrid, I was like, no, that's the way to do it. And Bill Strand is saying that, and I know, I think in the early days there was a bit of pushback on that.
Oh yeah.
No, they can only have screens. They can't have that. So, and the other thing I'll just add with the open air design is the fact that he's in a temperature controlled room. This is my office here, and I keep the temps and I'm able to kind of keep the humidity a little higher. It has a mist king in it. It has live plants and the bioactive in the bottom, and a fogger now, and that helps with the hydration. It's open. It wouldn't be something you'd put in any home. It has to be a specialized location. But I must say, it's a little harder. The more open it is, it gets a little bit more challenging, keeping in your ambient temperatures and humidity levels. So, part of that was experimentation and learning along the way. So, I was just very, very excited to see that where you were heading. And so when we started talking, I thought, this is what we need to do. We've not everything. There's things that sell themselves, like a 4x2 enclosure. That's extremely popular and can be used for lots and lots of different reptiles out there. And they're enclosures we sell hundreds of every month. But something that's a little bit more specialist, you start getting into arboreals and you start reducing the amount of animals that are typically kept. Once you get into something, a high humidity and so on, now you got to really think. And so it needs the ventilation, looked at, of course, fans and different layouts. The challenge that we discussed, and I think we figured out pretty well, having the lights front and back to try to get down to the floor so we can get the bioactive growing. So I guess once we started talking, I think you brought a lot of ideas to the table that I hadn't thought of. I think on the manufacturing side, perhaps there's some ideas that I was able to propose that, and we ended up with what you have behind you. And of course, I think
it's beautiful.
You hit the ball out of the park with the way you decorated them because they're stunning. But I was interested to hear the feedback many, many months ago, talking about how well the design is working, how well the ventilation is working, and can we tweak this? Can we do that? So I just enjoy those challenges, and with the goal of having the best that we can do.
Yeah, we've been working on this prototype for 2 years now, and of course we're both doing it in our free time because we both have businesses otherwise. Yeah. But we put a lot of effort into just subtle tweaking of making it work. But it's done a great job. And I think it's important to say that these enclosures, any enclosure, anybody making enclosures, there is a reason for every feature, every box. I know some of them, the reason is let's make it cheap and let's just sell a bunch of them. And so, but that's a reason. And our reason is what can we put in here that is going to help us with the next stage of development of our community. And I mean, anybody who's been listening to me has known my going forward, the two things for 2024, bioactive and small batch breeding. And so it's important to me that whatever enclosures I am associated with would help move that forward. And this one does, and very happy with this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's a nice feeling about it. I think, it's one thing doing something you enjoy and doing something you're passionate about, but because there's animal lives involved, it becomes sometimes an emotional thing, with folks online and looking at what we're designing and how we're designing it and how we're keeping our animals. So, there's a nice feeling knowing that you're not only pushing the limits and providing something that perhaps hasn't been thought of before, or a new standard or a new size or new technology. It's just a nice feeling. You know what I mean? It's not just, there's a place for the inexpensive sort of starter level. And even that's changing, even that's improving. But I just think it's nice to, contribute. I'm not wanting another career. There's a saying that I keep getting reminded of because I was like, I didn't think I'd start a reptile equipment company. And, but I get teased often, and there's a saying, once you're in the pet industry, you're always in the pet industry. No one leaves. And there's a lot of good people in it, and there's worse things to do. I think it's nice to make a difference, and so that's also a drive too.
Do you have an idea of what you'd like to see happen in the future? Not just with custom reptile habitats, maybe in all of reptile keeping, the husbandry, as the community. What would you hope for us?
Wow. I think at the end of the day, we're a fairly young industry. We haven't been going 100 years we go back just a few decades, I guess, and just have to think about what pet keeping was like 30 years ago, and how far it's already come. But, with the social media side, the influences, the generational change, and then, there's us and lots of contributing companies that are coming out with, Acadia just rolled out new lighting technology, and there's others doing that. The bioactive has just taken off. It was only just a niche years ago, and now it's so mainstream. The big box stores are carrying it and moving into it. So I think it's not only accelerating, but I think we're in for some exciting times. In the same survey, I noticed that in just a few years, the reptile keepers in the US had grown from an estimated 5 million homes to 6 million. And I think we're going to get from 6 to 10 and maybe even beyond that pretty quick. And because of the generational change, these are an animal that is very accepted. They're easy to get. We've got very, very good at keeping them compared to where we were decades ago for most species. And again, the information is readily available. So I see the industry and reptile keeping in general continuing to progress. I think now that it's becoming easier, and products like ours are readily available. Someone can just go click and order this, and the information is readily available and so on. So a relatively new keeper can start at this level and be very successful with it. So I just see that growing both in popularity and the trends that are in place already with better care. And better care is it's not just reptiles, of course. It's right across the pet industry, but it's not only important, but for the animals, it's important for our image. And that goes back to the influences. Look how that's changed. It wasn't that long ago that people into reptiles, black t-shirts, and they had a stereotype of a certain sort of person. But, look at the variety we see now. So it's just going to, I wouldn't say explode, but I think we're on a very good growth curve that will just really accelerate. So more popularity, more technology, more success, and way more keepers getting into it. So it's kind of a really, really fun time to be in this business, I think.
Yeah. And on my side, I care about the reptile community, but I have I'm taking care of the chameleon community. And, but I think that also is the arboreal community. We arboreal reptile keepers have a lot in common. Chameleons just have to be one of the most highly specialized for the arboreal life. And I think I'm excited about where we're going as far as thinking about the entire enclosure as an environment instead of just a cage that contains a chameleon that we want to look at. And so I'm seeing in the chameleon community, at least, so much more of an embrace of thinking about the environment instead of
Yeah.
thinking about the lizard. So we've really just touched onto a new era of husbandry, and I am grateful that I get to be part of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's the fun part, isn't it? And it's the sort of thing that I love bringing out a new product, and well, there's worse things to do. I'm thinking about one of the first arboreals I did, and I think it's always been kind of difficult. It's no, you don't find them available like you do your usual sort of landscape terrestrial design. Um, and until recently, like I said, the pet stores were carrying a pretty generic kind of version and that sort of thing. Um, I did one, 20 years ago, I think, for a green tree python, and I built a big, probably similar dimensions. I think it was a good 7 foot tall. I had a plant recessed in it. I've always been into plants, and I didn't do bioactive. There's no such thing back then. It probably just had coconut husk on the ground and that sort of thing. But the plant was recessed, several hanging pots around there, little automatic mister back then. Didn't have UVB, but it had a couple of heat spots and a light for the plants. But I've got that on the website, and again, that's going back a good 20 years or so. But and I didn't even know PVC existed or knew what it was. It was just something I built in my garage and so on. But to go from that to where we are now in just a blink of an eye. I think it's kind of impressive. So. Very, very exciting times to be in reptiles, and I think for people like us, quite rewarding to see, what we put out there being used and being really beneficial. So,
well,
that's
we
great.
saw what it was like 40 years ago. And so we have this huge contrast in our minds as to how far we've come. Of course, 40 years ago, we didn't have all of the digital image. We didn't have digital images 40 years ago. And so it's interesting how little of a record there is of where things were
Right.
40 years ago. Now, 20 years ago, we have pictures of that. They're floating around the internet. You can find history 20 years ago. 30? Not really. 40? No.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we do see much more of a contrast than many people.
Right. Right. And particularly if you've worked in the industry, as we have, and you tend to pay more attention to the, what's been going on. But no, you're right. We have, and captive breeding has changed everything. Of course, we not only can keep them, we can breed them. We can lifespans have gone up, and there's just. Switching something the other day, and someone was talking about the golden age of reptile keeping, and are we in it? Maybe we are.
Well, I don't know, because you and I can talk about the contrast of where we've gone in 40 years.
Yep.
Just think about the people who are starting now. When they look back in 40 years, they're going to be saying the exact same thing we are, and I can't even imagine what they're going to accomplish in that time. And so it's exciting to see where we've come, but it's also such an amazing thing to think about where we might go. And we just have to wait. Well, no, we're going to work our hardest to get us there, but I don't know where we're going to end up. So I'll be excited to see.
And it's it like I said, I kept reptiles as a kid. I've always been into animals, and reptiles being my favorite. I'm the person that goes to the zoo, and I'll spend all day just, sometimes you don't see the animals in some of the zoo exhibits, depending on the animal, but I'll spend a lot of time walking around and looking at the exhibit and so on. But, I think that side of it, as you mentioned, is really starting to take off. And I think that not only provides better, habitats for the animals, but I think it'll really broaden um, the the audience, the amount of keepers, for instance. So many people, I believe, in fish keeping will fall in love with the aquarium, and the animal becomes secondary, and
Hmm.
they want this beautiful display, and you go online and look at some of the vivariums that people are building around the world, and it's incredible. You're involved in the, we talked a lot at the Snake Discovery Build Off,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just look at that competition, and each year it gets better and better, and the
Yeah.
ideas are just, it's endless. It's endless. So, like I said, I've kept fish over the years. It's a great industry, great hobby to be in. But reptiles, in comparison, I mean, they're more interactive. You can hold them. They have faces. They have expressions,
Hmm.
and so on. So it's just it's exciting. But you'd be surprised how many people walk into the showroom here that not necessarily into reptiles, but they see some of the displays and like, wow, this is incredible. What's in this
Hmm.
thing? So it's a secondary kind of thing. So there's another sort of whole emerging market perhaps in that. But and I see a lot of that out there. There's folks playing around with different decor and different ways of putting it together and building things, and the results are incredible. So yeah, exciting.
Now, you mentioned a retail space. Tell us a little bit about that, and can people drop by and visit you?
Yeah, they can now. It has been I took this building only 20 in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. Uh, Custom reptile habitats have been going a number of years, and I had several designs out. Um, but I was sort of at that crossroads. I need to jump, and I need to uh, increase the capacity, start hiring people, and putting together this business seriously. Because before that, I was just operating out of home. I started drop shipping, and then I started
Hmm.
building. My garage became my workshop. My entire house became my warehouse, and it was time. And In doing that, I got a building that I thought, this thing's giant, but I think it's a good size. I think we can grow into it. And of course, custom reptile habitats over the last few years sort of, grew a lot, and blew through that building, ended up, getting a second building that's even bigger than this one, and moved the entire workshop into that. And that gave me a lot more capacity, for machinery and employees, and the ability to do lots and lots of different designs. So along the way, I was like, we're going to open a retail out there. We're right off the interstate,
Hmm.
and coming soon, coming soon. And I don't know how many dates I put out there. But the priority has always been, keeping up with the growth and servicing our existing customers. So slowly but surely, we've been doing the offices one by one, setting up new offices, and all that goes into that. And probably in the last, I think, 6 months, we finally the dedicated area at the front, put down the flooring, and got that together. And there's still lots of things that I need to be doing right now, but it made sense to open. So we've opened part-time hours. We're into our third month, and already I'm already planning expanding it, and expanding the offerings. We're about to start offering feeders, both live feeders and frozen. Of course, most of the supplies are bioactive supplies, and we carry Arcadia lighting, and we've got a few, enclosures that you can pick up and take with you. But the other nice thing about it is it's a showroom that's open to the public, so someone can come in, walk in, and they've seen it online, and oh wow, I wanted to see it. Unlike, I guess, a lot of products out there, you normally see great photography, and it's never as good
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
real
Yeah.
when you touch it in real life. But um, uh, our photography is pretty good. I think you've contributed greatly to that with the beautiful photos of your enclosures there. But I think the main thing is people can come in, touch and feel it, and most of the time, very, very impressed. So the showroom is working, it's paying off. And now I'm like, okay, get this thing finished, because it's the lobby area is about to be converted into a big cave, complete with vines and all that kind of thing to give it a real authentic feel. So still a little way away from having the grand opening. I want to have the grand opening when everything's finished. Of course, every time I think something's finished, we're expanding it and so on. But it is open. It's open, and currently we're having people travel from as far away as two states away, just to come in and see what we do or check out one of our enclosures in person. So it's been great. A long time in the making, but finally open part-time, and we'll have a grand opening in coming months. Hopefully this spring it'll be complete, and we'll be ready to sort of say, hey, we're finally open and officially. Yeah.
Well, I've got 3 people that have already said that they're going to come meet up at the grand opening. So you've already got a guest list started.
No, it'll be great, and looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been a lot of work, and I guess we've probably come a long way pretty quick. But it's not my first business. The last footwear company I launched, I ended up in. We were the second biggest competitor out there in that category, and in 6 years, I grew that from my garage as well, from a small web to just a website to wholesale. We're in 20 countries, and I had 3 warehouses and that sort of thing. So I've got that sort of experience, if you like, in business, but this is a totally different thing, and I don't have goals of growing this into multi-countries or anything like that. It's very much, a niche, if you like, high-end, sort of reptile enclosures, not something, everyone can wear a pair of comfortable shoes, but, like I mentioned, we're in 5 or 6% of homes. So a totally different thing. But I think it's nice to sort of, you get older, you get wiser, and hopefully you learn something along the way, so you apply it to your business. But I think it's grown, but don't have plans to keep growing. I think we're at a good size, and I just want to perfect what we've got, really get the offerings out there, and we'll see what the future holds as far as anything further. But right now, I just want to get everything finished and perfected. We're working on manuals, and websites are never ending. You think you've got it finished, and there's always something that needs changing, tweaking, improving. So that's where we are. But
well, where can people who want to know more about custom reptile habitats, where can they find information?
Well, it starts at our website, I guess, customreptilehabitats.com. We've got a couple of social media accounts, Instagram and Facebook, and we generally put on, here's what's happening, something new. Got a customer service people, so we've got a toll-free number. People can call us if they want to chat. Email, we try to get emails answered the same day. So we've got that sort of support system, but it begins at the website. Someone wants to know more about it, just call or email, or if you're in the area and it's convenient, come on down. And
okay. And of course, if you want to know anything about the Arboreal Enclosure, you just hang out here at the Chameleon Academy, and I'll be talking about it all year.
Exactly, and I'm glad you mentioned Arboreal, Bill, because that was one of the things that was like, this is a design not just for chameleons. I think the technology, as far as the lighting, the system that we've developed in here, with the ventilation and the layout of the lights, UVB, basking and so on. And I think that's one of the things you mentioned early on. You want it to be an arboreal line for arboreal species. And I think that's great. And there's lots of really cool ones, including some really nice lizards that are coming out, that I see more and more.
I've noticed when I do my interviews. I do interviews across the community when I am talking to people that have other arboreal reptiles. It's actually interesting how our forward progress goes in parallel, and the things that
Hmm.
they've discovered parallels what I've been doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I mentioned the a green tree python, which was I wouldn't say it was my first arboreal. I had an arboreal design in Australia, and I had I forget what I built it for, but I ended up housing an olive python at one stage, and then a water python. And both of those species are not typically arboreal, but they're a snake, so they climb. So yeah, that was a design I had years and years ago. But yeah, arboreal is just it's a different it's a different design, isn't it? It really has to be.
Yep.
You have to really pay attention, and I think one of the other things that gets me excited is I looked at all of the typical designs just in a landscape terrestrial type design. And at the shows, I would see, the pet stores, I'd see something that was, in my opinion, too small, and most of them glass with the typical screen top and the lights on top. And I'm like, and then I'd go to the shows and I'd see bigger, but it was always sort of the box with a few slots in the back. And then as bearded dragons, I've seen this evolve. People saying they need more space. And so, well, let's put them in a 4x2. But the lighting was sort of an afterthought, where you typically just screw the lights on inside. And I was like, oh, come on. It doesn't look good. It's very reflective. You got all kinds of challenges with the heat. If you're keeping snakes in them, you got the danger of them wrapping around the light bulbs. So I've been a big one of, I call them a kind of a breeder box, if you like. And come on, guys, we can do better than that, and, but I'm really pleased that at least three of the companies have now incorporated the mesh that I bought. I think I was the first to introduce it. It's like a honeycomb, high, very strong aluminum mesh. And it lets 77% of the UVB through, but it's, very, very strong. So I'm seeing that incorporated in lots of other designs, and more people putting the lights externally and so on. It gives the animals more room and so on. So things like that are nice to see. That's that progression. But arboreal is a different challenge. There's a lot of things that just have to go into it. So now, we've got the offerings out there, and again, you can see if I'm looking at your set behind you, you can see,
Yep.
I mean, you could put almost anything in that. I could imagine a green tree python, and an animal like that, or an emerald boa, or there's so many. I'm not just talking about snakes or lizards, geckos, and so on. Amazing animals, but do you want to see them in a boring box? Maybe now it really, really looks like a slice of the animal's habitat, and I just think that's really going to open doors. So yeah, excited about that, and that you didn't say just chameleons, only chameleons. This is arboreal and for anything. So. And I think you began testing it with some geckos and so on.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one because my panther chameleon is in the prototype. This one, then maybe I put my emerald tree boa in this one, and the one over here, it's got a Eurypletus gecko.
Yeah. So think of all the different keepers out there that would love something like that. That instead of that, basement type of project, you can feature it in your home. And we started this conversation with folks saying, I wouldn't want to pay for it. No one's going to pay for it. And I can tell you the people that will contact me for something large and want to put, a bearded dragon in a giant 6 foot, and I want all the lights. I want the best. This is our pet. And we want to care for it. So that's just fun. That's just fun. But yeah, I think it's so unlimited in what we can do with these new designs. So really, really exciting.
Yeah. So everybody, this is just the starting. We are going to have quite the 2024 here.
Oh yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right. Any final things you'd like to say, Paul?
No, gee, I think you covered a fair bit of ground there, Bill. I think it's an exciting time. I know that we have quite a few new things in the works. That some accessories that we're developing, and I'm sure we'll get these finalized as far as the accessories that we're working on, and some new designs in 2024. So it'd just be interesting to see where we are a year from now. But it's heading in the right direction. The reaction and the feedback so far has been stunning. It's been really, really great. So, I just think we're onto a really nice new direction. Like I said, I played around with a few designs years ago, and I just didn't think they were big enough or right. And I just love that this collaboration has produced this kind of result. So, thank you again for the conversation, and I think we've got a good beginning to grow upon. So
we got a lot of work to do, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's say goodbye, and we'll see you later.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Bill.
So that gives you a little bit of a background about this new collaboration. Those of you who've been following me over these last 10 years of making chameleon cages, you know that when I make something, it's not just a box. There's actually a reason for it, and it's a tool for us to discover something or move our husbandry forward. In this case, two very strong themes for the year going forward in the Chameleon Academy is going to be a better understanding of the entire environment through learning more about how to maintain a bioactive substrate. And also, we'll be talking about small batch breeding and how that can take us to the next step in our community's evolution. Presently, we have two enclosures available. There's the Arboreal XL, which is the one that's behind me, and that has the forest floor viewing window. And then there's the Arboreal L, which instead of the viewing window, has an extra deep substrate layer. Both of these are 3 feet wide, 4 feet tall. The L is 24 inches deep, and the XL is 30 inches deep. The stand and the shelving that you see behind me, those are available as options. And that guy over there, well, he'll be making his appearance soon. For more information, go to chameleonacademy.com or click the link in the description below. Thank you very much for joining Paul and me here today. This is Bill Strand signing off, and I'll see you next time.